Couple of things, starting off with the sad news. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, prominent Nigerian novelist, award-winning author and writer. It was announced that she lost one of her twins, Nkanu Nnamdi. Some time back, she announced that she gave birth to twins via surrogacy. That is using another person to carry the pregnancy. Then there was the talk about surrogacy and all that. But very sadly, we've heard that one of the twins had been sick and unfortunately passed. And there's been a lot of tributes from the President Tinubu, from Peter Obi, Atiku Abubakar, the Director General of World Health Organization, and other prominent global personalities, have paid tribute. Very, very sad news. Condolences to Chimamanda and her husband, Dr. Ivara Esege. So condolences to the family of Chimamanda Adichie and Dr. Ivara Esege, for the loss of their son. We pray that they find divine solace and strength to cope in these moments of grief. Then there is this sad news from the United States. We have Renee Nicole Good, 37-year-old mother of 3, who was returning after dropping a 6-year-old child, and then there was this unfortunate encounter with ICE agents, Immigration Customs Enforcement agents in the United States. And if you watch the video, there are several angles to that video. It's the videos show the shooting was unnecessary, it was reckless, it was cruel, it was unwarranted, it was uncalled for. There was no justification at all, other than someone had a gun and then felt that he has been given the power to decide who lives and who to honor life. And that's quite unfortunate. There have been protests. It happened in Minneapolis, and he said that it happened a few blocks away from where George Floyd was, held down and asphyxiated to death. So this is quite unfortunate, and there's been protests against what took place. Sadly, the right, the conservative right, the president, vice president, and prominent members of the US administration have been trying to defend what took place, but as more revelation has come out, it's shown that what the Trump administration is saying about it is clearly wrong, is blatant falsehood. We just hope that there will be those responsible for this, are brought to book, are brought to justice. So those are the sad developments. And today I saw KPMG. KPMG is a global network of professional services firms. KPMG released a newsletter on the tax law. So KPMG newsletter says Nigeria's new tax laws, inherent errors, inconsistencies, gaps, and omissions. Started with the introduction on 1st January 2026, the Nigerian Tax Act, NTA, and the Nigerian Tax Administration Act, NTAA, became effective. It goes on to say, though the other two acts, the Nigeria Revenue Service Establishment Act (NRXCE) SEA and the Joint Revenue Board Establishment Act (JRBEA) has become effective since June 26, 2025, they were only activated on 1st January 2026. As a result of allegations of discrepancies between the harmonized bills transmitted to the Presidency by the National Assembly and the gazetted acts, the National Assembly has just released the certified acts. Hopefully, this intervention will put this matter to rest, but only time will tell. Then goes on to say, as with any tax reform, the new tax laws seek to achieve the following objectives: equity and fairness, simplification and efficiency of tax administration, competitiveness, adapt to changing economic conditions, combat tax avoidance and tax evasion, revenue generation, economic growth. You can click on these links. Okay, they provided some links to read our analysis of the four tax acts. However, there are certain errors, inconsistencies, gaps, omissions, and lacuna in the new tax laws that need to be urgently reconsidered to ensure the attainment of the stated objectives. In this newsletter, we have focused on some of the key gaps and provided the basis for our suggested revisions to the tax laws. You know, and then they now mentioned the sections, where there are errors and gaps. Let me just read the first one. There are several. Section 3, subsection B and subsection C of the NTA, imposition of tax, the error or the gap. The section specifies persons on whom taxes should be levied, including individuals, families, companies or enterprises, trustees, and an estate, but omits community. However, community is included in the definition of person under section 201. Recommendation: if the intention is to impose tax on communities, this should be explicitly introduced in section 3. Otherwise, the laws should clearly state that communities are now exempt from tax. Then there is section 6, subsection 2 of the NTA, controlled foreign companies, controlled foreign companies CFC. So then there's section 17, subsection 3B of the NTA, that's section of non-resident persons. 4. Section 17, subsection 3C of the NTA, taxation of non-resident persons. In each of these, you have error, gap, and the recommendations. Number 5, section 20, subsection 4 of the NTA, deductions allowed. Number 6, section 21 of the NTA, deductions not allowed. Then number 7, subsection 27 of the NTA, ascertainment of total profits of companies. Number 8, section 30 of the NTA, ascertainment of chargeable income of an individual. Number 9, section 39 and 40 of the NTA, computation of chargeable gains. Number 10, section 47 of the NTA, indirect transfer of ownership of companies or assets. Number 11, section 63, subsection 4, section 162B of the NTA, collective investment scheme. Number 12, section 72 of the NTA, chargeable hydrocarbon tax (ACT). Number 13, section 162 of the NTA, income tax exemption. Number 14, part 4 of chapter 8 of the NTA, exemption from VAT. Let me read this. It's the error or gap here. The VAT exemption list includes money and securities, essentially financial instruments relating to return on investment. FIRS circular on VAT on services of financial institutions clarifies that return on investment is typically not liable to VAT. Insurance premium, which is money paid to cover risk that that may crystallize relates to financial services that are not liable to VAT. So the recommendation, they said part 4 of the NTA should be updated to include insurance premium. So this is one of the errors gap and their recommendations section. Number 15, section 196 of the NTA consequential amendments. Number 16, section 201 of the NTA general interpretation. Number 17, section 201 of the NTA general interpretation. Number 18, paragraph 4 of part 3 of the first schedule and table 1 of first schedule of the NTA petroleum investment allowance. Number 19, second schedule of the NTA export processing and free zone entities. Then number 20, paragraph 3 and 4, second schedule to the NTA export processing and free zone entities. Number 21, paragraph 5, second schedule to the NTA export processing and free zone entities. Number 22, paragraph 9, second schedule to the NTA export processing and free zone entities. Number 23, ninth schedule to the NTA stamp duties dutiable instruments. Then number 24, paragraph 4 of the 12th schedule to the NTA partnership. And then number 26, paragraph 5, subsection 2A, and paragraph 5, section 3 of the 12th schedule to the NTA pensions. Then paragraph 8, subsection 2, that's number 26. Paragraph 8, subsection 2 of the 12th schedule to the NTA application. Number 27, section 13 of the NTA income tax returns for individuals. Okay, let me read this. The section mandates that every individual must file annually with the respective state tax authority. However, it does not specify a submission deadline. But section 101 states that a taxable person who fails to file returns or files incomplete or inaccurate returns will be liable to an administrative penalty of 100,000 in the first month of default and 50,000 in the subsequent month in which the failure continues. So their recommendation on this error or gap is that a timeline for individual filings should be clearly specified, similar to that for employer filings, to prevent potential compliance issues when the law takes effect in 2026. Number 28, section 22, subsection 2 of the NTAA, returns for value added in tax. Number 29, section 22, subsection 9 of the NTAA, returns for value added tax. Number 30, section 5 of the JRBEA, functions of the board. Then number 31, verification for small companies. So it says the NTA and the NTAA define small companies and provide certain tax exemptions that may affect the obligations of larger companies that they transact with. As such, it may be difficult for large companies to verify whether a counterparty truly qualifies as a small company. The TCC may not suffice for this purpose as the information covers the 3 preceding years before the penultimate year. Recommendation: there should be a simple certification that can be easily generated by small companies or businesses from TaxPro Mass to be presented to the parties they transact with to verify their status. So in conclusion, this newsletter from KPMG says that undoubtedly the new tax laws will transform tax administration in Nigeria. There are many provisions in these laws that will result in increased revenue for the government if well implemented. However, there is always a need to strike a delicate balance between revenue generation and sustainable growth. It is therefore critical The government reviews the gaps, omissions, inconsistencies, and lacuna highlighted in the newsletter to ensure the attainment of the desired objectives. Government must also seek international cooperation and collaboration to facilitate the sharing of information, build capacity and capability of tax administration in the country. Businesses should conduct a comprehensive analysis of the impact of the changes on their business operations. The analysis should include a detailed evaluation of tax footprints to manage undue exposures and ensure compliance. There must be assurance that adequate documentation is in place to support related party and third party transactions and manage exposures during a tax audit review exercise by the tax authority. Their finance and tax functions should have a basic knowledge of the changes through training programs and consultations with professionals and experts to ensure compliance and mitigate risk. They also will need to leverage experts for payroll configuration and support e-invoicing support and outsourcing tax managed services, among others. There must be proper configuration of companies, ERPs, and other systems to align with the provisions of the Act, such as PIT tax rates computation, fis- fiscal fiscalization, e-invoicing, etc. So this is from the KPMG newsletter. So the KPMG newsletter didn't focus on the alterations between what was passed in the National Assembly and what was gazetted, right, which has been something that's been in the news. Rather, the KPMG newsletter looks at the laws and says there are errors. Let me see the exact words they used. They said Nigerian new tax laws, inherent errors, inconsistencies, gaps, and omissions. So there are inconsistencies within the law, right? There are some parts that are contradictory. There are some parts there are gaps, omissions, and they call that this should be reviewed. They call for urgent review. So in line with what we've been saying about there were alterations between what was passed by the National Assembly and what was gazetted, KPMG says there are a lot of gaps in the new laws that should be looked into. And some have said no law is perfect, but then if a law as gigantic, as consequential, as important as the tax law, if it's filled with flaws and errors and things that could, can be an impediment to its implementation. And since we've not had change in the tax law for so long, and there are issues arising from it, the honorable thing is for the Tinubu administration, if it wants the tax reform laws pass into law, tax reform bills pass into law will be a signature achievement of the Tinubu administration. Something that they will boast that they were able to achieve. But if it is fraught with a lot of issues and irregularities, if a reputable firm as KPMG is saying there are issues, if honorable members in the House are saying that there are alterations, if there are issues with this tax law, there's no the National Assembly is being controlled by APC, by the ruling party. So if it goes back to the National Assembly, there's no way they are going to just strike it out or say it's not going to work, right? It's obvious that there are issues here which should call for a public hearing. We should call for experts in tax and all that. Yes, there's a tax committee on tax and fiscal reform. It's possible that the timeline they had a short time to put together those bills, and in the process some errors and mistakes were made. And now that there are issues, the presidency should make it as a duty to, just as the quickly appointed heads of the oil regulatory agencies, as they quickly um, screened and approved the minister ambassadorial list and all that. Whenever the government, the administration wants something quickly done, it can be done. So they should call the heads of the National Assembly, Senate and House of Reps. See, there are issues in the law that should be reviewed. So even if it means taking the next 6 months or next 3 months or so, whatever it takes to review the laws and correct the issues that are there, and then making sure that what was passed in the National Assembly is what is signed by the president and what is gazetted. Taking time to do that so that the legacy legislative achievements under the Tinubu administration will not be continually marred in controversies. Because if this Tinubu administration should leave and these problems with the tax laws persist, it's very easy for another administration to come and say, let's scrap it and start afresh. And then that will lead to putting an end to a signature achievement of the Tinubu administration. So for the sake of what is proper and what is good, that should be the way forward. The National Assembly should look into it. And if they take it as a matter of urgency, they can quickly do that and ensure the right thing is done. So the next issue is on that of Dakti Baba Ahmed.